Hi, everyone. Thanks for taking time out of your Saturday to join us today. This is our online How to Audition for Zoom seminar. I'm Amanda Cantlin, the Director of Marketing and Communications here at VG, and I'm really happy to welcome you all to today's event. We're going to start with a few questions to sort of give an overview of what auditioning looks like right now, and then we'll move into a Q&A session for a deeper dive of topics to interest everybody here on the call. We're looking to end around 3:30 p.m. You may notice your microphones have been muted. But if you have questions as you go along, feel free to pop them into the Q&A function. The chat is also live if you've got something you want to share with the group. And finally, there's no need to take notes. We are recording this, and we'll send you the recording next week for your reference so you can use it going forwards. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our panelists for today. Lili-Anne Brown will be our moderator. She's an acclaimed director here, a resident director of Victory Gardens, and she'll be helming our production of Colored Water next season. We also have J.C. Clementz, Steppenwolf Theater's casting director and artistic producer, Emjoy Gavino, the casting director and associate artistic director of the Gift Theater Company, and also the founder and executive director of the Chicago Inclusion Project, and Bob Mason, Chicago Shakespeare Theater's casting director and artistic associate. So a big thank you to all four of you for being here with us. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lili-Anne Brown, who's going to get us started. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. Good to see you all. So I guess we'll jump right in, right? Now, I myself don't know a darn thing about a Zoom audition, so you experts are going to tell me. And what I do know is I think we should talk about tapes, what we call tapes, which is funny because no one uses tape anymore, right? But we're used to recorded auditions, and now we're looking at potentially going into Zoom auditions, which would be through Zoom, like we are now, live, remote auditioning. So what does the Zoom audition process look like?
Well, I can say for me that for the pandemic, we did for our short Shakespeare, like hundreds of submissions from actors. And then the next step was to Zoom with them with the director, but then everything got canceled. So I haven't actually had to do the Zoom. I know the way we were going to set it up, because I think one of the things you have to really think about for the Zoom audition is your reader and how you're going to deal with that. And our solution was that we should have a reader on our end, so that the actor doesn't have to deal with it, and then you're not dealing with any sort of gaps there. Because when you talk a lot about self-tapes, because one of the tricky things about self-tapes in the quarantine is how people deal with a reader. And there are some things that work really well and some things that do not. So we want to get to that, but I don't know if the other two of you have had, when I saw the thing about Zoom auditions, I'm like, oh, well, I actually haven't done a Zoom audition yet.
I actually haven't either. I didn't know what Zoom was until like 3 months ago. But when we were auditioning things for Gift, it was all self-tape, and then we would circle back to the director, and she would offer adjustments, and then they would send us more tapes as a callback process. As an actor, I've done Skype callbacks. Which I think would work the same way. And what I remember feeling was completely out of control. Just in terms of it's, you know, you can't control how their technology is and what your technology will be. The best you can do is find the best spot that you have for Wi-Fi and pray. But there's always a little bit of a delay. And so, you know, the same thing that you tell yourself as an actor going into live auditions is prepare for the absolute worst thing to happen. And you should be ready to roll with the punches, especially because I think with Zoom and with Skype and with all of these things where there's a delay and we just had a technology kerfuffle right before this seminar started. Like, things will happen, and you can't let that, you know, you have to let it wash over you and just breathe into it and do the best you can, acknowledging that probably something will happen with technology that is beyond your control. So that's the one thing that I remember.
I will say the good the good news is that we're all in this together. Everyone is going through the same thing. And I think the most important thing, especially as things start to open up and maybe we'll be able to have some kind of in-person auditions, I want to make sure that there's equity in all the auditions, so that we don't have some people auditioning in person, and making sure that everyone feels comfortable. So I feel like until everyone feels comfortable, I think we're all going to be doing video auditions for a while, because that at least levels the playing field so that everyone has a shot and no one's putting their health at risk, because everyone has a different amount of comfortability of going and seeing people in person. And I think the other thing is, I think most of the things that we've talked about doing are having taped auditions first and then Zoom callbacks, because then there's a little bit more control with that first read through of the scene, and then we can give adjustments, and we would provide a reader and have everyone else go dark, so it's just the reader and the participant on screen. And I think that's the most equal way to do it for everyone. It's not ideal. We all know that we wish that we could be in the room together, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, unfortunately.
I will say I do a Zoom class on Monday nights, people working on Shakespeare pieces, and it's gone pretty well. I mean, as far as just being able to go back and forth and to give them adjustments. Then I can go away, I mute myself, I get rid of my video, they can do it, come back, give them notes. You know, I think that that works out pretty well. The tricky part is if you ever need to do like a chemistry read, like you're doing Romeo and Juliet, you know, we're talking about, you know, well, does the director get in front of their house or on their balcony if they have one, and the actors come and they're 6 feet apart and they read with each, you know, just like trying to figure out what that's going to be is tricky.
You know, I taught the first year MFAs at DePaul for 2 months on Zoom, 4 nights a week. And what I am concerned about, because I had this problem with some of my students, is what will be offered to those who really are having a technology problem. Because I hear like, okay, to even the playing field, let's do nothing live, all technology. But what about the people that don't have the technology? Mm-hmm. What can be offered to those people? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wonder, I don't know how the studios like, you know, Vagabond that have studio equipment set up, or Acting Studio Chicago, you know.
So they'd have to potentially pay?
No, I think you're saying like,
I think that it should be up to the theater
would pay.
Yeah. To pay for that, or to provide a space where if someone does not have the technology, that's the fair thing to do.
Yeah. The danger are those places, and I know a lot of them are doing their classes by Zoom.
Right.
So, you know, finding a place where it's going to be safe for the actor to do it as well is really important.
Yeah.
So, and I think like moving forward, as you know, and depending on the size of your organization, as we send out casting calls, I think it's great, Lili-Anne, thank you, to remind ourselves to include in that audition notice, please let us know if this is a problem for you, and we will try to figure out how to accommodate so that it is an equal playing field, because I think this is all new that we're navigating together. But I do think that there's solutions, because we're creatives. So like, I think that's kind of a beautiful idea if you're doing Romeo and Juliet, to be, you know, on a balcony and just watching. I think what a creative theatrical solution to that. And maybe it's not going to be great for January, but maybe we can do that now. And if that's an idea that just like rolls off the top of your head, then like there are probably hundreds others where that comes from. So I do think like it's all of our responsibilities moving forward to continue to roll with how to make this okay for everybody. And that said, like JC said, we're all in it together. So, you know, I think we're all going to be grace-filled when it comes to, if you only have your phone and it's not like the best quality and you can't afford a ring light, as long as I can see your face and hear your voice, like, it's okay.
Yeah. And I found out from self-tapes, I think the phones give really good quality. My phone gives me better quality than my computer does.
Yeah.
And I never had trouble with sound usually. The only time I had trouble with sound is actually if someone was in a space and they just hadn't figured out how much sound they needed in the room for their voice. So I find that actually the mics on the smartphones, as long as you have, enough lighting in front of you that, and you're far enough away from the wall so you're not casting shadows.
Right.
But I think all of that stuff is so workable because we all know what kind of situation you're in.
Yeah.
We just want to see how you're approaching this role.
Yeah, and ideally we would give everyone enough time to either access the equipment and figure things out. I mean, if you can hop on Zoom with you and a buddy and just experiment with sound and lighting, and they can give you feedback on what looks good, we shouldn't, as theater artists, we shouldn't be giving you 24 hours to record a big scene, right? Like, I think that's part of the accommodations that we'll start, doing.
That's very helpful in the self-tape. If you are using a reader who is on Zoom, don't record from Zoom, because you can actually start, if you have a Mac, you can start QuickTime and record directly. I think PCs have a lot of recording technology or apps that you can download. And the camera on your computer will be much better if it's downloading directly to your computer rather than recording the Zoom session, which is going over the internet and there's going to be glitches and stuff. So you can be on the Zoom session at the same time and recording yourself in the background, have that nice clean download that will still have the sound, and send that one in rather than the Zoom session.
Yeah, and make sure you experiment to make sure that.
I have a question about, I'm sorry, Bob, but I just have a question about what JC just said, because now we're going to get into talking about actual scenarios, which is great. Thanks, JC. So you're talking about an actual scenario wherein somebody is doing a Zoom audition, but also recording it. What are the scenarios in which someone would need to, after doing a live Zoom thing with a casting director, still send a recording?
Were you talking more of if you are using Zoom to have a reader?
Correct.
And you're making
I
a self-tape?
see.
Correct. Because a lot of people right now don't have a natural reader in their house with them. And
right.
Having a strong reader is so essential, I think, to a self-tape. And if you're using a sibling or a friend or a parent or a partner, like, they might not be able to give everything that is needed. So if you have an actor friend who you can Zoom with, and you can actually have that relationship, because that's what we're looking for. We're looking for that connection between person to person. So anything you can do to help yourself in that realm is helpful.
Yeah, and to modulate it so the reader's not going to be 5 times louder than you are. Work on that as well. Play it back.
Yeah, always with a self-tape. Go back and watch it. Make sure you can hear and see yourself.
And that that your download works. Send it to somebody and see if they can download it. And if it doesn't, and also I think the major thing we should say, as far as me, it always should be horizontal, not vertical. The auditions.
Landscape, not portrait.
Yes, it's the way to go.
Yeah.
What else would you say are maybe the differences between, like, for instance, we know that when you submit a recording, you have to slate, which means, you have to say your name, give the information, what role that you are auditioning for, etc. It's an informational thing that's at the top of the recording. What other differences would you say there are for people who are really used to, self-tapes maybe, but are apprehensive about the live Zoom?
I
so
think
much of it is the same.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of being live, figuring out where to put your scene partner, if it's a monologue, or your actual partner. I can't exactly tell you how, but I know there is a way to arrange the squares so that the person you're talking to is like right below your camera. And then you could be talking right to them, and that eye line is less scary than like looking directly at the casting director, which some people like and some people like me do not like. And just
do any of us like that? Noted. Okay.
Just err on that side and don't look directly at people in the room or on a recording. But if you are reading with someone, or even if you're not, set that person a little bit to the side of the camera or a little bit low, and play around with that and see what looks best.
The same way you would think about it in an audition room. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
What I was going to say about recording thing to do, because it hurts you don't want anyone to read with, don't record it and then fill in the blanks, like try to time your response to the next time then you've recorded the reply, because it never works. And you lose all spontaneity, and it's better to hear what the person is saying and us not hear it than for you to try to record the other person's dialogue. It just you can't have a successful audition doing that.
One thing that I would say is that with a live Zoom audition, you actually have control of the room in a way that you don't always have in an audition where you are going into an unknown space. So you have all of that time and homework to actually set up what's behind you, look at how your camera angle is, play around, rehearse with the actual camera beforehand. If you can get someone else to rehearse with you, you have all of that control, which you don't always have. And so take advantage of that and use that to your advantage, because not everyone is going to do that, and the people who are going to rise above everyone else that is taking the time to do the work.
Emjoy
That's a really good point. I want to get into those things. Like, for instance, anyone taping an audition should not use my background, right? Like, this is a terrible background for an audition, unless you are auditioning for a cooking show. Maybe then it's great. But I like to sit here. I've got a thing that's the right level, and I have really good lighting. So I tend to do casual things in my kitchen. What are some other tips for Emjoy? I see you have a fantastic neutral background.
I'm in my bedroom, and it is the quietest corner of my house. So that's actually why this is my Zoom corner. Again, pandemic times, you can't always have access to a beautifully blue painted wall or whatever. So the least distracting background and the most quiet space is the most ideal for Zooms and for taped auditions. Is we want to focus on your face and your storytelling and your expression. We don't want to be checking out what magazines are framed behind you.
And make sure your cat is out of the room.
And make sure.
I just got rid of my cat because they're going to come along, and you just don't want that. You can also buy background sets where it's like 2 poles, and you can put a piece of cloth over it. That's whatever color is going to work for you, and it's an easy setup that probably doesn't cost that much money. And if you do a lot of these, that might be a really useful thing to invest in.
And in a pinch, you could always take a lightly colored plain bed sheet and duct tape it and stretch it out, and we won't know, as long as it's not super wrinkly or whatever, which is very nice.
Iron it. Ironing is so important with backdrops.
But
I've done that at CST, where I've taken a bed sheet and just put it across the wall.
Yeah.
What other tips might we have?
You want to make sure that in terms of lighting, that you are the focus of the room. Like, for example, my background, not great. There's a bright light here where your eye goes to that probably first. I have a weird shadow coming this way. That is not actually, this was intentional, right? No. but this is not what to do for an audition. You want to make sure that you are the focus of that.
Yeah, overhead, like direct overhead lighting, not great because, like Bob said, shadows, and yeah, just we want to be able to see your whole expression. Also, something that is true on stage, but especially true on camera. Be careful of looking down. Like, even if you're thinking or whatever, we lose you completely. So like, up and out always, because theater, but like especially on film, we don't get your eyes the minute you do that. So just just be wary of that. And it's the thing that sucks about not being in the room is you can't use the whole space. So also practice, like, figure out what your frame is and give yourselves like those parameters, and then find a way to be free, because we're gonna notice if you feel confined. So give yourself enough time to like move around and figure that
I
out.
love the way you're framed right now. Is there ever a time where you think someone should be showing more of their body, depending on if it's a really physical role? Actually, I actually might want to see how your body is being engaged.
Absolutely. And that's when things like tripods are helpful, or a very nice steady handed friend, or, like moving your laptop further back. There's, there were times when I was stacking books on top of pillowcases, and like we do all those tricks, but you get the right angle, especially if it's a physical role and somebody has required movement. Like that's gonna pop up too. And it's possible. You just have to give yourself enough time to experiment and see what works.
And that's something that with a live Zoom audition, I think you also have to be prepared that the people on the other side might say, actually, would you mind moving your camera back a bit because we need to see more? So just know that you may have done all this work to prepare the perfect shot, and then they might go, well, I need to see more. So just,
Right.
put
on pants.
Yes.
Put on pants.
But what if it's your comic secret,
Something that made me think, Emjoy, when you said looking down, when people have pages, one thing that I have found with video auditions, especially when they're live, is the sound of the pages turning. So just be aware of how much your microphone is picking up the sound of the pages, because sometimes it can actually, the crinkling of it can get in the way of you actually connecting with your scene partner.
And sometimes people put them in front of their face without realizing it. In person, that happens all the time too.
Yeah.
I think the biggest issue I have with tapes that are for the theater is that when people try to treat it like a camera audition, and they take it very intimately, they get very quiet, introspective, and I'm like, the director will always say, can they fill a space? So I think it's kind of the way we're all acting right now. We're not overdoing it, but we're showing that we have energy.
Right.
And there's a theatricality about that energy that is so important not to lose that when you're doing these auditions. I always say, pretend you're in a medium-sized room.
I think that's great, because it's going to be very tempting to go small.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to pop too much, but like, we're not casting, tiny indie films. We're trying to get you back on stage eventually. So like, think about that medium-sized room, even if you're not in one. I think that's great.
I got a tape from a woman for Juliet. It was like the most brilliant Juliet I'd ever seen, like quicksilver, her thoughts, but she spoke very quietly. So I said, well, can you now just make it bigger? And found out the minute she tried to do that, her voice strangled. She actually physically couldn't make herself louder. And I thought, oh, that's fascinating, because it never would have occurred to me that she actually physically can't do that. She can actually only talk softly.
That is odd. I wanted to circle back to one thing, because you talked about sides, and real quick, I wanted to just give a tip, because we're giving tips. Like here's a sticky note, yeah? And my camera is right, boop, that's the tip of my finger, okay? So I can take a sticky note or a full-size sheet of paper, right? And put it right, now you can't see it. You can't see it, but it's right. I'm reading off of it right now, and it's right under my camera. Yeah. And you can't tell, it is stuck to my screen. So folks, that's a thing that you can do. You can put sides on the wall right behind and just, be looking there. You can put them dead on your screen, and that looks like you're looking right at the camera. So that's a tip for sides if you need to see them.
What are people's expectations about memorizing a side or having it look like it's memorized? Because in real-time auditions, in person, when it's Shakespeare, we're like, just get familiar with it. Don't spend your time memorizing. But I wonder if that's different with contemporary texts. And actually, I found that a lot of people who have sent us out tapes, they have memorized it.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
we all know memorization is always, you know, the goal, but we don't always get the time to memorize. And sometimes the text is difficult and we just need a few guideposts. And it's always great to, you can put that, like you can do a share screen where you've got it up on the other side of your screen in another program, or you can just stick it right to your screen. I just wanted to give that tip because Lord knows I've done a lot of these kinds of things. And sometimes I need to remember what the questions are and I stick them to my screen.
I've got them right here on my screen.
That's so smart. But yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the director and the casting director to answer your question. Like, for me, I would, especially because I've been working with so many more world premieres where the writer is sometimes in the room. When people try to go, you know, completely memorize, they will eventually just make the words up and paraphrase. And that is absolutely, like, think about Ike Holter, like, you can't paraphrase somebody who it's down to a beat and a science, which is like what a lot of playwrights believe their work has to be word for word. So I would rather people be as familiar as possible, but know when they can look down and still stay connected to their scene partner. We will forgive you not being able to memorize a full chunk of text for storytelling and saying the right words.
Put yourself at an advantage. Like, just be familiar with the text. We don't care if you're holding it. We don't care if it's up on your screen. The most important thing is that connection that you know, it's the audition. That's the most important thing, at least for me. I know that there may be some casting directors, some directors who may want you to be memorized, but I think that in fairness, if that's the case, if that's the expectation, they should also let you know that and give you enough time to do the work.
I think that's really important what you all are saying, and I want to kind of go off on that because that goes beyond the technology, right? That goes beyond, are we on Zoom? Are we recorded, right? We're talking about what's important in an audition, period. And I think that's really important to remember as we're all feeling so disconnected and people might be potentially stressed out about, is it reading? Is it coming through in this remote way? And so it's really cool to hear you guys say, like, connection is the most important thing. Being familiar with the text. And that's not just words. It's like, what is this about, right? What does this character want? You understand what's on an inside person, and how can you convey that to us the best? And I think maybe remembering, maybe having some conversations with a friend on Zoom, like the actual template you're going to use, and like maybe talking it through. If you have a coach, that's great. Like, but if you just have a buddy, I think that's also great, where you can just maybe talk on Zoom about what you think this character is about, what you think this scene is about, and then you're already sort of getting comfortable and connecting in sort of a heart space on Zoom. That might be something good to do.
Yeah, I think that's a great tip just because, like, look, the pandemic times, we're already isolated enough as it is, right? So much of that is going to read because the screen will pick that up. The more you can set yourself up for success by connecting, we can always tell. Casting directors and directors can always tell when you haven't done that homework of understanding what the wants are and knowing what you're doing in the scene. We can tell when you just read the scene and didn't read the rest of the script. We can tell because your performance will just be so much richer and so much more interesting when we've seen 50 people in one day. To have your version of this nuance of that character in that scene, that, like, also it's just more fun to work that way. And when you have somebody to bounce things off of, hopefully a coach, but maybe also one of your smart friends, like, it's gonna show up on your tape.
Oh,
yeah.
It's comfortable enough. Yeah.
I would say it's similar to, you know, if you're a tech entrepreneur and you're giving a big presentation to get backers for your new product, it's the same thing for an actor, except you are the product. And we can tell if you've done your work. If a tech entrepreneur comes in and has not done the full work to show how their product works, no one is going to buy it. It's the same thing when we see everyone coming in, and you can see the people who have done the work and you can see the people who have not, and it automatically elevates them, and you go, oh, well, these people understand what this text means. They know what the character wants. They're fighting for something, and whether that fighting is, you know, pulling out their sword and fighting for it, or just like knowing the tactics to get it, we can see very clearly that they understand how this character works.
The thing about self-tape too is that we can look at 10 seconds and go, no, they're not connected, I'm moving on. Like, we don't have to sit, you know, we're not in person and watch the whole thing. It's like, no, you have to be connected right from the moment you start, because there are 400 other tapes that have to be gotten to, you know, so that's important.
That's a really good point. Like, so as casting professionals, what are you all planning to do to make yourselves more comfortable and receptive to this format that we might not dig? Like, I know I, for one, as a director, I will do anything to not have to deal with taped auditions. Like, I want live. Please, can I have live? You know, like I anything to get around having to do tapes. Like, I will make people, I do all kinds of crazy accommodations. I'll come in on a day I'm not supposed to come in to see someone live, you know, because that's how much I dislike taped auditions. Now, I'm gonna have to get my mind right, because I'm gonna be seeing some taped auditions, right? So what are you guys gonna do as casting professionals? Is there anything you feel like you have to do to sort of get your minds together for this new thing?
Actually, I love the taped auditions.
Yeah,
because I can do it on my own time. Like, I can do it at 9 o'clock at night if I feel like it, or when I have some extra time. And also, I also have then something to remind myself. I'll have the tape to go back to, you know, just to you know, I'm old, and sometimes it doesn't stick the first time. So I actually love having that. And I love because also you can reach out to so many more people.
Right.
You can see, because if you're not doing 10-minute slots, there's so many more people that can be seen by you, which is awesome. That's just for me.
Yeah, yeah.
Something that I would, in talking with directors, that I think is helpful is to have more digestible sides that are not super long. I think that in a live audition process, you can have a longer side because you're going to be giving adjustments. You want to see the full breadth, but I think giving a little bit shorter sides and maybe having 2 or 3 of them so that they're more digestible, or something you can begin, because I try very hard to watch all of the videos that come in and watch the whole thing. I can tell you that I don't know any director of a production, even when I'm directing for a production that I'm directing rather than casting. I normally don't watch all of the taped auditions. I will watch enough to know, okay, that person compared to who I'm leaning towards. But as a casting director, I feel it's my duty to make sure that I'm advocating for the actors so that I can talk to the director and say, okay, well, maybe the first 10 seconds aren't great, but you need to see the work that they're doing in second 45, second, making sure that our job is to advocate for the actors.
Always. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to steal that, JC, of self-tape first and then Zoom live callback, because then Lil, if I get a director like you, best of both worlds, right? But as Bob said, the more people that we can see and consider is greater, and to give more people the opportunity, and to give ourselves the opportunity to see what that text looks like on as many people as possible. Like, this is the weird gift of pandemic times, right? Is we now have to do it, but I think I can embrace that part. That said, the ability to know how an actor responds to a director, because that is the relationship that you are trying to build for the next several months, that's important too. And so I think, to answer your question, giving the actors, all of whom we are rooting for, as much information and tips from the get-go, as well as a reassurance that they are being given grace and understanding from our end, that way, when they do that preliminary self-tape, they know that it's gonna be okay. And then from there, moving them, a smaller group, into the spot where we can then play with them in the room, I think will be a way that I can set everyone up for success. But also, maybe with people's permission, recording those live sessions so that we can refer back to those moments, which we wouldn't necessarily have done in a live situation. So like truly trying to embrace the gifts that this time has given us.
I wonder what's going to happen for us when, like JC said, or what you just said, if we know something about an actor and they're not delivering, but we know that there's so much more there than what they're showing. How do we say that to a director? Because we can't whisper to them anymore, like, no, have them do it again, or give them this direction. Or I think that's something that we'll have to talk to directors about, like, how present do they want us in the room?
Right.
Because that's happened so many times where I'm like, this person's having a terrible day, call them back tomorrow, because you'll see something entirely different. And it's interesting that we'll have to kind of figure out how to, navigate those waters.
Right. I mean, that's in the chat, right? Like,
I know, right.
That's right. Kind of what I'm thinking. It's a lot like a live audition where, my casting director is kind of next to me, and we're having a private chat. Like the little sticky note that might get passed over is now in the chat.
Although, isn't there a way for the other person in the Zoom to see the chat? I get scared about that. So then it's a text message. So then we're like present, but then also like, oh, okay,
there has to be a pre-agreement, obviously, like, okay, this is how we're going to signal during the auditions, because this is the Wild West. This is a new frontier. So I think thinking through stuff like that, Bob, is so good. Like, I wouldn't have thought of that. Like, how are we going to communicate during? Do you even want my square? Am I like a non-video participant? Right. How do you want to set up the virtual room?
Yeah. And what we do, and it's easier because it's Shakespeare, like with Romeo and Juliet, if ever there was an opportunity just to give them a monologue for their initial audition, we did that so they didn't have to deal with the pressure of getting someone to read with them, and
anything else that you'd like to say before we go to question and answer? We're going to field some questions from the chat.
Also in the non-distracting thing, don't wear like strange clothes that will distract us from your face. Like anything that will distract us from your face, don't do it.
But it's also that, like, that's what you would say for a normal audition. Right. Don't wear stuff that's going to take away from your form. Don't wear those dangly earrings that I want you to move the whole time.
Right.
It's everything else just applies.
Right.
I think.
Yeah. So true.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take some. Oh, so there's a poll going out right now, y'all, just so you know. They just put a poll up, so if everybody could just answer the poll question so we know who you all are. I thought that went out earlier, but it's going out now. So that's all good. Okay, I'm gonna look through the chat and see what questions we've got. Okay, so Ian, hi Ian. Ian asks, what are some things that do not work very well, Ari, having a reader?
Having your own reader, is that?
Ari, having a reader. I think just wants to know, I maybe want some stories about having a reader gone wrong.
Well, I
don't know. I can think of a million things that could.
To answer that.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, Ian, maybe you might want to say something more specific about what you want to know.
There are things that didn't work well.
Well, like when you try to be your own reader and you record your own dialogue, that never.
Right, the thing you said earlier, that's,
The thing about making sure that you're both at the same volume level, or the reader is even a little softer, just so you're not being, outgunned by the reader's voice. And the tricky thing is, Emjoy said, like, being a reader is a really great skill and a really valuable skill. And so sometimes it's hard to find someone who's going to give you enough, but isn't going to take the scene in a direction maybe you don't want to go.
Or turn it into their own audition.
Yes, I think it's easier that you can do this as many times as you need to. So if you feel like that's what's happening, you can always say, oh, let's do it again, but give me this in this section. Like, fight me on this so I can fight back. Be specific with your reader about the things that you want, so you can have in some ways it's great because you could just direct your own audition.
Yeah, as JC said, you have complete control over it. And if you are lucky enough to have someone in your household or that you're podding with, do not put them in your scene. I've seen a few self-tapes where they want to be generous and they have their reader in the scene with them. We don't, I'm sure they're lovely. We don't care about them. So like, make sure the camera is on you and they are somewhere behind your camera, and make sure that, like, again, test the levels so that they're not super loud or, whatever, that we can hear you better than them and see you better than them. You should always be the focus. Do not put them over here, because profile will suck. We do not want that either. And I've seen that in self-tapes. Please don't do that. You're doing yourself a disservice.
Also, don't wander. I have seen some where the person has their phone and they just walk around as they're doing their scene, and you get to see their whole house.
Distracting. Yeah, and I also think it's important too when you're taping. Even if you're seeing you chest up, I think unless it's a contemporary play that asks for it, be standing up, because your energy is going to be forward. If you're just sitting on your couch in your living room, it's so nonchalant that it becomes not important. So unless that's part of the play, I would say keep yourself in an energized place.
Yeah, if you wouldn't be sitting in the room, don't sit on your tape. In fact, really, you guys have been saying it the whole time, thinking about your auditions in rooms is a really good sort of, just do that. Think about, like, where's the reader when I usually go in and have a reader versus where's the director, think about how it's usually set up and see what's the best way for you to emulate that in a virtual situation. Like, just using those memories. If you've ever been, if you are someone who has auditioned before, try to use your memory of how the setup was.
And also, sometimes in real life, you'll have in our previous life, you have a bad reader. Or say, like, your wife is doing it and she's not an actress, and so just make sure you're responding the way you'd respond if she had given you the intention that you need. Like, just don't pay attention to the way she did it. We want to see what your response is to what you think is going on in the scene. Yeah, so it doesn't have to be a Meisner, I'm only going to give back what I'm getting, because that's getaway madness and divorce lies.
Another question. Okay, well, let me go down here and see if Ian clarified. Oh, no, Ian says, thank you. But Ian had another question for Bob. Even for a monologue with direct address, you wouldn't use the CD? Does he mean cast?
Eye contact?
No.
CD. Okay. Then you know what it means.
Like if someone's
casting director.
Yeah, if someone's doing a soliloquy that's direct address to the audience, I'm not the audience. You pick. It doesn't have to be the audience. It could be, I'm telling this to my best friend because I want them to help me with this problem. Because anytime you're addressing the audience, you need something from them. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not just imparting information. You need them to agree. You need them to challenge. You need to charm them so they won't think that you're an asshole, because what you're doing is kind of an asshole thing. So so make it another person or make it two people, but The only time I think it could work directing it to a CD is if you're doing a Shakespeare scene and you have an aside, like, it is my lady, oh, it is my love that she knew she were. She speaks yet says nothing. What if that? Like, and then make me the audience just for one moment. That could be very charming, you know, and then go back to, oh no, my focus is on Julia.
But not the whole piece.
No.
Yeah.
No.
And even more so, I would say with contemporary, I don't make me in your scene. I want to watch you.
Because we become the scene partner then, and we feel like we can't do our job. And I used to do a thing to try to like train the actor. I would look down and pretend I'm writing something and look up and be like, oh, they're still talking to me. Okay. Until they got the message, don't talk to me.
Yeah. I just did a Shakespeare thing where I did like direct camera address, but it was really on purpose. And I'm a director and I made that decision. And honestly, my actor was like, seriously, you want me to do that? I feel like she was so like, no, that is verboten. And I was like, no, it's literally what I want. So like you can trust us. That is, unless you're asked to, just don't do it.
If it's if it's Iago trying to seduce his audience and you decide, I'm going to talk to you specifically, that could be something that could really work. You know?
Yeah, judiciously. And honestly, I kind of want to say, because I've been doing a lot of I've been directing the most Zoom things ever. And we're all creative, we're all artists, and people people are alone in their homes, and when they get to do an artistic thing, sometimes they really want to shine and get creative. And I totally get it. We all really admire that. That is wonderful. But have options, be ready to re-record, because you might do some things that the director is like, why did you use all those props? It's really distracting. Can you please do it not with that? So also think about stuff like props, because generally you don't need them. You don't need them. They're just going to make things really busy. And you don't have to you're not filming a YouTube extravaganza. This isn't the show. So much like in a regular audition, you don't have to have props and a costume and, a lot of stuff. We really just want to connect with the text and see your energy. So yeah, think about just stuff.
Have you done a lot of scene work on Zoom?
Mm-hmm.
People, how does that work? I mean, how is it working for you?
I'm like, you're assuming it works. Well, it really depends, because I've been doing a lot of different things, right? I did some academic work, so everybody's in a different space, and now we have to do scene work with each other. And we did pretty much what you talked about. Everybody else goes away and is a non-video participant, and then the people in the scene are, and sometimes sometimes it was 10-person. I did a 10-person scene on Zoom. It was crazy, but it was lottery day, It's got 10 people in it. So it was a play that I knew very well. So I kind of was able to guide people through it. Again, academic setting, not a thing that I'd be super looking forward to doing in any presentational way, because for me to do something like that, to present to an audience, now we need a video editor and a sound mixer and all, equipment, all sorts of things that people don't just have laying around, and that I'm not able to do myself as just somebody that's directing people that are in a Zoom room with me. But in terms of other stuff, I have directed a couple doing a scene from Richard III, and they're a married couple, so they were selected for that. It's oh, okay, these folks are married, they have this house, and so I have to do things like location scout, right? Take your phone, take me all over your house. Tell me, is that Eastern light or Western light? Because I need to know when we're taping it, is the sun going to be over there or is the sun going to be over there? I have to location scout it like I'm filming. And then kind of direct them through, okay, you have to do it. You have to do a master shot that I can see you both in. Then you have to put the camera behind you and shoot it over your shoulder. Then you gotta do the scene again, put the camera behind you and shoot it over your shoulder. And then I have to edit all of that just to get one scene that's got 2 people in it. So it's really like being a theater director and a film director, and these are the times we live in. But then when it's a monologue, like the monologue that I was just describing earlier where I did direct address, I had a lot more freedom, right? So with her, I was able, because it's so much less technical than shooting the scene with just 2 people, that now causes a bunch of different issues. If it's just one person doing a monologue, now I was like, oh, cool, we can have so much more fun with your background and the lighting, and we were playing some music, and like had her like walking in and doing it, you know, I was able to just, I had more freedom because I didn't have to deal with camera angles and all of that stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, that is theater on Zoom. It's crazy, y'all. Let's get some more. Okay, Amelia, hi. What are the differences for equity versus non-equity auditioning companies, as well as equity versus non-equity actors? Do any of you, I would not assume there's any difference in doing a Zoom audition or a remote audition.
I mean, and we're all technically equity houses, casting for equity houses, but I would treat everything the same as an actor, just as professionally and do your best. And I don't think there's a difference, really.
The only thing you might be asked to do if you're brand new to the person is to do a general audition, send in 2 monologues, so we can just get to kind of know what your work is, as if you came in for a general audition before maybe you get a scene, just because we don't know you.
Yeah, a lot of people have been doing generals, like just send in things. Some casting houses took the time at the top of the pandemic. I think PNR did it.
It was like a joint, it was joint.
Yeah, that's right. It was like everybody was like, hey, send us a tape, which was really cool.
People should be using this time, like if you have a website or developing a website, trying to put content on it, create some great content, and it has to be great. Like it can't be like, this is what I did in college. It has to be great, but you know, what a great time to be able to do that and just like throw away everything you don't like. Yeah.
Okay. There's also a few questions hiding in the Q&A section. Where's the Q&A? Oh, I see. Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Colin. I will get to those. Okay. When taping for more physical roles, how much of your body do you think should be shown in the shot? We did address this, but if you just want to say exactly full body or knees up, go ahead and say that, panelists.
Yeah, like if it's Mercutio, I probably want to see how you move because it's a very active role. So I'd like to see at least knees up.
Something that when we often have to tape and we get permission from equity when a playwright is not in the room for an audition, and the feedback that because I will do it or an intern will do it, the feedback that I often get from the playwright is they want to see more of the body. So I always tend to say like waist up is like perfect for me. I know it's different for everyone, but I always give this, if we're asking for tapes, I will specify that is what we would like.
And you could have a slate that you've made that you send with every audition, if you still look the same, that is a full body slate too, so.
Yeah, but usually like if it's for a specific role, like Bob was saying, or a specific kind of show, it'll probably be in the audition notice. We will need to see your whole body. Otherwise, if it's just a typical scene, I mean, use your judgment, but waist up is usually ideal.
Thank you. Okay, from Carolyn. Hi, Carolyn. When you watch self-tapes, is there a certain point where your attention begins to wane, like a minute or 2 minutes? Do you usually watch tapes with multiple scenes all the way through?
With what all the way through? Sorry.
Tapes with multiple scenes. As in, if you've asked them to do two different things, do you watch both?
Oh,
Go ahead.
yeah.
Yeah, I would say that yes, there is a certain point, unless it's really, really good. But I think that's the same in the
room.
Like, that's why monologues should never be longer than 90 seconds, because after that 90-second point, you just go there. I've never seen anyone after 90 seconds bring something that went, oh, wow, I didn't see that before the 90 seconds.
That's not a challenge though. So don't do
right.
it.
The slow burner is a fun surprise, not like something that's not goals.
Don't set yourself on fire.
Your blood sugar might be dropping because it's before lunch. I mean, that's just going to happen. Sometimes you have to go, oh my God, get with it, focus, you know.
I will say,
but like you said earlier, Bob, what's great about it is you can do it in your own time. So if you're like, man, I'm getting sleepy, unlike in the room,
right,
you can just be like, I'm going to stop watching these and I'm going to come back after I take a nap or have a sandwich or whatever, which is a great thing.
Yeah.
What were we going to say?
I lose interest when I see you lose interest. Like,
amen.
200% of the time when I see you check out, and it happens. Look, sometimes we come in and we're tired and we haven't had our coffee and like we start a scene and we weren't ready for it. The minute I see you check out, I'm done too. And that is really easy to see. So just completely from the top of your scene, make sure you're engaged and that you know what you're wanting, because the minute you click out, we will too.
And it's got to be important. It's all about the stakes, no matter where you're auditioning. And we can tell if the stakes are very middle of the road, like you don't really care one way or the other. It's like, well, I don't care then. And especially when you're seeing like 50, 60 people in a day, if people just start coming in and don't really have a passion about what's happening, then you don't have, you really have to like make us pay attention.
And your moment before you start is so important, and it's the same in an audition room or in a Zoom. But that first line has to be a reaction to what happened right before. It always, you can see the people who come in with a reaction because they're engaged immediately, they're connecting with their scene partner, and the people who are just saying the first line and then it takes like 10 seconds for them to actually engage with their scene partner. So let your first line be a reaction.
Yeah, and I would think that's actually a little easier to do in this format because you're not walking in from off the street and your bus was late and you couldn't find parking and all of the crazy things that happen to us live that make it so much more nerve-wracking to audition in person. You can control a little bit more. So sort of take that pandemic gift, as Emjoy would say, and use that to your advantage. Okay, here's a question. Oh, I'm sorry, Bob.
In some ways, it's a more intimate experience doing a tape and sending it to us because we are more focused on you. Mm-hmm. You know,
it's fascinating. I was thinking about this watching the Democratic Convention this week about how we are used to seeing speeches with groups of people cheering, and how politicians had to adjust to the room and actually give directly. It's this exact same thing with a video audition versus an in-room audition. You're saying the same thing, you're trying to get the same thing across, but you have to adjust to the technology and what we're given right now.
Yeah. Okay, ready for another question? Okay, well, this one's easy. Do you want to receive pics and resumes right now?
If you have them, sure.
Yeah.
I always want to know. I want to know what people are doing and what people have been doing. And if I don't already have you or your updated stuff, then like, you know, our jobs never stop. We have to keep learning our community. So.
And with everything being in flux, I find myself having a lot of extra time too, while waiting for things to find out if they're going to happen. So it's a great time. I went through and cleaned my database out for people that I haven't seen in 10 years, you know, and so getting stuff from people now is actually a really good time to do it because we actually have more time to pay attention to it.
What do y'all do with rando submissions? Like what submissions that come, by rando, I mean submissions that come when you have not asked for them, when there's not like an open, like, hey, we want submissions right now. What do you do with those? Do they go in a specific file?
Yeah, if it looks like they have like skills and stuff that you know are going to be useful, I put it in the see the next time we have a general, or pre-screen for this next show.
Mm-hmm.
Exact same.
Yeah, usually, well, and again, now is different, but typically we know what shows and projects are coming up. So, you know, by somebody doing the research and knowing what our company does and submitting themselves, I might be able to be like, oh, well, let's see them for this when these auditions roll around. So, you know, there's that. Or like Bob said, if there's just something interesting in their special skills or on their resume that just sparks something, I'll put a star next to their email and keep them in mind.
And actually right now, if you're interested, you can say, hey, could you send me a monologue? You know, that
Yeah.
you can get that done now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great to know. May I say, do not send me any headshots and resumes. No, and I'm saying that because you should know, like, I get a lot of them. Like, people will find me, whatever theater I'm at, and send it care of the theater, or they'll, like, find me in life, which is really creepy and scary. But, like, the directors can't really do anything. And so if you send headshots and resumes directly to directors that you would like to work with, they are like, where do I put this in my house? And my house is not where casting happens. So they kind of don't know what to do with it, especially if it's a freelance director like me. It's like, yeah, whereas, like, you know, there were people sending me stuff for Color Purple, and there were people sending me stuff for Schoolgirls, and it was like, oh, you could have sent this to Adam Belcourt if only you knew I was doing Schoolgirls, you knew it was at the Goodman. The step you missed was looking up on Goodman's website where it says very clearly Adam Belcourt, well, actually it wasn't Adam at the time, but like where it says, you know, here's who the casting director is, and then sending it to casting saying, attention, Schoolgirls, because some of these people would have been amazing, but they didn't understand what to do or how to get their information to the right person.
And unless you know the director, they're going to give it to us or they're going to throw it away. So.
Right, and if you're sending it to me in La Jolla, I'm not even in the town where I can give it to the casting director. I'm using this example because it really happened. Where I was like, wow, you went through the trouble of finding me at whatever theater I was at, wow, and sending this headshot. And like, but I was on the road, so, and I actually hung on to that headshot as long as I could. But like, yeah, so casting directors, that's what these great folks, this is their job and this is what they do and they want your stuff. So send it to them because they know what to do with it and they've got a real spot for it and they know how to contact you.
And if you're sending it and you know what the season is, write a small paragraph that says, I'm really in project for this role. Because then I can put it in that file. Mm-hmm. Like you just did a huge favor for me.
Yeah.
Okay, here's another question. Hey, Mateo. As a mainly theater actor, not feeling stiff within the frame is super tough, I found. Any exercises or tips to get comfortable in this box we're given? So Mateo's feeling really stiff.
Yeah.
Being in the frame,
totally,
and wants exercises or tips to get comfortable.
I mean, I would just treat it like you walked into the tiniest audition room possible. So like if it helps, tape out the parameters so that you know where to stop. And again, just practice, give yourself enough time. The first few takes are gonna feel horrible until they don't. And then again, focus on your scene partner, focus on your storytelling, focus on your wants. All the stiffness it's like, what do I do with my hands? That won't matter when you just like know where your parameters are and then just start playing. But do practice, you know, with the setup of your camera or your Zoom or your friend or whatever. But then beyond that, I'm sure there are probably physical things you can do to loosen yourself up, but that's going to be different for everyone. What will always get you is being invested in what you were already trying to do in the first place.
And sometimes I would say, go the other way, do it going all out with all your energy as big as you want, and then go, now I'm going to stand here and do it. And put all that energy into my partner. Get it in your body, and then just.
Because then it'll be inside you. Yeah.
It's the exact same thing as auditioning in person, because I think there's barriers there too. You're like in a room with other people watching you do your craft. Like that's awkward, and auditions are just awkward. How do you introduce yourself? How do you say hello? Like what's going on out in the waiting room? Can they hear my audition? All of these things are going through your mind. But if you just let that go and focus on the scene, connecting with your scene partner, like Emjoy said, that's if you go back to the basics of acting, that will open you up.
And to your moment before that you talked about.
Yes. Yeah. I will say though, there does come, and I've done this to myself, there does come a point where you've given yourself too many takes. So also give yourself, if it's not Zoom, if it's a self-tape, give yourself half-hour tops, because I promise you those last few takes, you'll go dead in the eyes. They won't be great. You won't feel good. We won't like watching it. So like, you know, in a live audition, we wouldn't give you 20 different ways to do it. So like, do yourself a favor, give yourself like 3 takes. If you don't get it, walk away, shake it off, go do Taibo, come back and like try it again. But like if you're doing multiple takes in a row, it'll show up and not look good.
Yeah, I actually had to do a tape after not having performed for a long time for the Beautiful City Project to sing this song.
Oh yeah.
And I must have taped it 20 times because I was so freaked out. And I think I used the second.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yep. May I say that was beautiful too, Bob?
Thank you. But you start worrying about like that word wasn't, that note wasn't.
Get in your head.
You're so picky about it that.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. If Gift or Steppenwolf or Shakes are doing self-tape generals that specify AEA only, what are the panelists' feelings about non-AEA people sending in their auditions as well? Well, first of all, you know, I think there's an assumption in this question, so let me get rid of that one. Are any of you doing self-tape generals that specify equity only?
No.
Then we don't have to worry about this. Next question.
It's the only time would be if we're trying to cast a single role and we know it has to be equity. But then again, maybe we'll turn you equity. So, you know.
That's a great point. I mean, I really don't care whether you have AEA after your name or not. What's most important to me is the work that you're doing. We can put anyone on an equity contract. All actors, I mean, everyone is talented at a certain level. And so if you win the role, you win the role.
I think, you know, they might be basing it on back in the day, 500 years ago when we saw each other live. You know, when we had AEA generals, non-union people were not allowed to, or, you know, there was an order which you would get seen. We're not in those times anymore. And so I personally am not going to turn away a tape because you don't happen to have a union status. You know, we're still trying to find the right people. So we're not holding generals, but if we were, I don't think the rules would be the same.
When we were casting Six, we were a theater in Canada was doing it too, so they asked us to do generals in Canada. So we were going to Toronto, so I was getting all of these self-tapes, and this woman sent me a tape that blew me away, and she ended up getting cast in the show, and she wasn't even Canadian equity. She's like 24 years old, like, you know, but she was incredible, you know, so.
Okay, next question. This is for Bob. Bob, a couple minutes ago, you suggested now would be a good time to send in monologues. How would you like to receive them? Cold emails that include the taping, or an introduction email and sending a taping if invited to at that point?
No, send it in. castingoffice@chicagoshakes.com. Send it in, you know, a small paragraph of introduction, and just include the tapes. Don't, you know.
I would assume you would want them to attach their headshot and resume.
Yes, in one PDF. Don't separate them. Like, don't make us do that extra step.
Yes, please. It's just like stapling. You can do it. You can make your PDF one document, headshot, resume.
And then the thing about the small paragraph, it's kind of like when people used to write cover letters or mail. It could be things that are on your resume, but it's like, it's that elevator speech where you have 20 seconds on an elevator with me. What do you say? So I will give you an audition at Chicago Shakespeare. Like, what is your relevant experience that makes me, want to hire you? And it could be even like when I was 16, I saw a production that you did and it made me want to become an actor. I'm like, oh, I'm going to give that person an audition.
Boom.
So,
yes. And short and sweet, y'all. Short and sweet. I will also say about introductory, quote unquote. It is a cover letter, Bob. It's a cover letter. It's an email now, but it's still a cover letter. And you don't want more than a paragraph. And by paragraph, I don't mean 20 sentences in one big long paragraph. Cover letters should just be like, hey, here's my stuff. Thank you so much. I'd like this opportunity. And if there's something specific you want to say, some specific reason, I'm really interested in this role or this play or your theater or, what'd you say?
I'm SAFD certified. Something will tell me, oh, you're a fighter too. That's great.
Exactly.
A hot tip with those emails as well, I find it really helpful, in addition to attaching your headshot and resume in one PDF, it's great to embed a small photo of your headshot in the actual email, because then I'm connecting your name with your face one extra time. The more that I can actually see your face and name together, the more likely I am to know you, the more likely I'm going to be able to pick you out and go, oh, I want to call that person in. I need to remember you.
Yeah, I used to do that with real cover letters, but I've never thought about telling people to do it with emails. It's a great idea.
Yeah, it is. Of course it is. And if you did do your work on your website, and you've got a reel there or whatever, put that link, put a hot link, make sure that link works when I click on it, put it right there in your email signature, or refer to it in your cover letter. Hey, I have a reel. It's on my website. The link is this. Let us know if we go to this link, we're going to see something more.
And if you're new to Chicago, let us know you're a Chicago hire, because cell phones don't tell us anymore where someone's from. And so I don't know if you're coming from Columbus, in which case I'm probably not going to hire you, or if you're, here and you have housing.
And a note on websites right now, like, take the time now to build your website, because I can tell you right now the number of times that a director or someone says, hey, you should check out this actor, and I go to find them, and because I haven't seen them before, I don't have their information, I don't have their headshot, and I'm Googling, I'm like, okay, well, they did that show, and now I have to email this director to find out what their contact information is. You should be Googleable. Even if it's just a simple, your headshot and resume on that web page, like, you can do that for free, and it's really simple. There's only a few ways that we can get to know you. It's through auditioning and seeing shows, which right now we're not doing any of those in person. It's through your headshot and resume, and it's through a website. So you can do two out of the three right now.
I do have to say about the Google, though, because as somebody that just spent a bunch of time working super hard on their website, and it got I launched my website earlier this year. How Google does this, basically whatever comes up first in Google is pages that have had more traffic. So the more traffic a page has had, the more Google lists it higher. So when I launched my website that had zero traffic, it basically Google wouldn't give it to you. If you Googled Lili-Anne Brown, spelled it right, if you even Googled Lili-Anne Brown website, it wouldn't pop up. You would get Goodman, Tribune, Steppenwolf, basically all these big old sites, because my name was somewhere from a show I did 6 years ago, somewhere in their website, because those websites had a ton of traffic. That was like, and even now, if you Google me, my website, that has now gotten some traffic, because I kept being like, please go to all of my friends. I like posted it, it was like, please go to the website so it has traffic, so it will come up in a Google search, and it's still on like page 3. So unfortunately,
Who did you
we
build your
sometimes have to
website?
do the work on that. What?
Who did you build your website through?
Squarespace.
Because I think Squarespace, I know Wix does, they have something that will actually like ping your website so that it
Oh
gives.
yeah, you got to pay for it though, and I couldn't afford it, so.
Yeah. But that's also why it's important if you are building a website to, when you're reaching out to casting people, put it in your signature, put it in the paragraph
Right,
so
that's what I
that
was
it'll
saying.
just
Link,
encourage
so we can
that.
go directly there. Because
Yeah.
Googling sometimes does not work until you've actually had your website for like a year or two.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't want to see 5 videos of your high school and college productions. Like,
I mean, I do because I'm bored, but like not for this.
your mom
No
does.
one wants to see those, but Emjoy and your mom.
Oh, right. But so I will also say Facebook, sometimes I've used as a tool
I use
to
it
find
a lot.
out about actors.
I'm somebody.
Well, because if people don't have websites, but also if your
Right.
profile is a dog, or I can't tell, sometimes I can tell by
Thank you.
mutual friends, because sometimes I want to find out about people you've worked with and what they can tell me about it. And so something that an actor told me a while ago is to have an email. It doesn't have to be your personal one that you check all the time, but an email that you do check attached to your Facebook account so that we can get to you directly. I feel so weird messaging people on Facebook Messenger, but sometimes it's the only option I have because they don't have an agent and I really want to get that person in the room. So if you have a, emjoyactor@gmail.com or whatever, that isn't your thing that you check every day, at least it's a way for me to get a hold of you. So that's something to consider, because we do use Facebook and Instagram sometimes.
That is such a good point. So again, in those like public headings on your Facebook, that's where I put my website there. I have my representation there because I know people might be looking for me and I want them to find me and I don't want them to have to go to page 3 of Google. So I try to make myself findable.
Right.
It's also it's my bio link on Instagram in case somebody's like, if they find me on social media, I try to give them my professional, official way to find me so that they're not sending me a Facebook Messenger or an Instagram DM or some weird thing like that, because I might not get it that way, because those things go on like, you're not friends with this person, weird inboxes that I don't see for a really long time sometimes. So always try to get people the straightest, most professional line to you, and have one if you don't. Because professionals don't want to DM you. It's not a good form of communication. We want to use official professional channels.
They're trying to get around their agent because they won't return your phone calls.
Right.
One thing we haven't talked about is how do you prefer to have a self-tape sent to you, in what mode? Like, is it YouTube? Is it Dropbox? Is it like Vimeo? Because one thing you want to think about when you're sending something, say via YouTube, that you make it private so someone with a link can do it, because there are a lot of YouTube videos out there of people's auditions. Like, I was looking at something and I was like, oh my God, this woman's audition for Music Man is on YouTube. Because it wasn't private
And unlisted.
And a link, because what I find is that directors do not want to download a large file onto their computer. So Vimeo or YouTube are only two that I accept, and I state that very clearly. I also find that Google Docs, for some reason, Google Drive will completely crash Outlook on Steppenwolf's computers. So for some reason, so I the only
pay attention to what they tell you.
Yeah, follow the directions. I mean, the rule is, like, think about, if you're going to be in a room with a director who's going to be giving you direction, we want to see that you can follow the directions that were given in the auditions as well.
Yeah, or what it says on their website.
Follow directions.
Yeah.
Any direction that's in a written casting notice or whatever you were told, please, 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 please always follow directions to the letter. Like, just do what they say, because they're not random. Those directions are there for a reason, and it might be a reason that's not obvious to you. So I would say always follow directions. And if it's not possible for you to follow directions, then you probably need to ask a question like, hey, I have an inability to do this thing the way you asked me to do it. Is it okay for me to do it this other way? Because, you know, then you might get some help, and because we want to help you.
Yeah. Or just knock on Bob Fall's door and just give it.
Okay, you playing around, Bob, but don't be mad when somebody comes knocking on your door.
We've put the address in the chat so you can all.
Bob Mason doxes himself in a Zoom panel. Headline.
I love Bob Falls, and I've had 2 incredible dreams about him in my life, which are hysterical, and I didn't really know why. We were swimming with dolphins in one of them. So.
Amazing.
What? That is awesome. So we are wrapping up. Do any of y'all panelists have any last things to say? And does anybody viewing have a last question? I've got some thank yous, and thank you so much for taking this time. This was great. Thank you, Irene and Amelia.
I want to say, cut yourself some slack. This is a really, really hard time for everybody. Mm-hmm. And it's so freaking stressful, you know, just because, so give yourself some slack.
Yeah.
We'll cut you slack.
We totally will. Yeah. Oh, I guess, did we already say this? Give yourself as much time as possible. I mean, hopefully you have a long time to put your self-tape together or to prep for a Zoom, but like also because links or technology will take weird times to upload or whatever, just send it in with not right at the last minute, and you know, allow some time for that too.
Follow the directions of when the tapes are due. I can't tell you how many tapes I receive 2-3 days after the auditions, and at that point we've already made up our mind.
We cast it. Yeah.
William says, much appreciated. You took a Saturday to help us. Thank you. Mateo says, thank you.
What's a Saturday?
Thanks for attending. I know. What is Saturday? Thanks everybody for coming to the seminar. Thank you, panelists. And, oh, hey, Amanda, take us home.
Here the whole time. Yeah, if that's it, we'll wrap it up. And just a reminder, we will send this out to everybody who signed up for the session sometime next week once we finish editing it and uploading it to YouTube. So keep an eye out. And thank you so much to everybody who joined us. And thank you especially to our 4 wonderful panelists. This was a great afternoon, and I know I learned a lot, even though I'm not an actor in any way, shape, or form. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care, everybody.